Welcome to the Intellectual Podcast. I'm your host, David S. Dawson, and this is episode 199. I can't believe it, folks. We're almost there. 200 episodes. We're going to do something really cool for the 200th. On Tuesday, October 3rd at 7 p.m. on the Intellectual Entertainment Facebook page, we're going to do a Facebook Live of the 200th episode. You'll be able to join in as myself, Whitney Wegman, Mark Atkinson, Steve Schwartz, Carla Van Wagoner, and, maybe hopefully one or two other special guests do a giant host-filled reunion as we catch up with each other and reminisce about all that has happened since we started the podcast 3 years ago. It's going to be a really fun experience, and I want you to join in and be a part of it. We're going to be taking questions from the live audience during the show, so hop on, watch the live broadcast, and be sure to be putting comments in because we're going to be monitoring them and we're going to be taking your questions. So it should be a lot of fun. Be sure you go like the Intellectual Entertainment Facebook page now if you haven't already. And then be sure to join us at 7 p.m. this coming Tuesday, October 3rd, for our huge 200th episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. Today's guest is local filmmaker Edreace Purmul. Edreace is a graduate of SDSU, and he's continuing to make his films here in San Diego. His latest effort is this incredibly cool film called The Playground. It's like a dark telling of some incredible folktales that he spun into modern-day settings, and it's just very, very cool stuff, and I think you'll really love it. And among the extremely talented cast of actors that's in this film are a couple of actors that we've had on the podcast, and they've been in a number of intellectual productions as well. Shane Allen and Merrick McCarthy. We got to give a special shout out to Merrick, who this week was on the season premiere of Lethal Weapon. So it's just wonderful to see some of our local talent on the national stage like that, and kudos to Merrick for all the work he's putting in and all the exposure he's getting out there on big projects. Looking forward to seeing him and hopefully Shane and a number of our other actors in a lot of stuff to come. Now, The Playground premieres on October 12th at Reading Cinemas Town Square in Claremont at 7 p.m. And tickets are available now at theplaygroundfilm.com, so make sure you go check out the website. That website has a ton of really nice promotional footage and videos for the film, not just a trailer, but a bunch of BTS. And I think if you're curious about the film after listening to Edreace talk about it, you should definitely go check out the website and get yourself more into what's going on there, because I think you're really going to want to go see this film. It's very intriguing. It's theplaygroundfilm.com. The premiere is October 12th here in San Diego at Reading Cinemas Town Square in Claremont. So make sure you go check it out and get tickets for the film. You're going to want to see it on the big screen. It's a beautiful film. Then also on midnight Friday the 13th, the film will then be available as well on iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, Xbox, Sony, and Google Play. So they have a full distribution set up for it, which is really, really cool. And I'm going to stop talking now and let you just hear about it straight from Edreace himself, the writer and director of The Playground, here on the 199th episode of the Intellectual Podcast.
Talk hard and enjoy the mindgasm. The Intellectual Podcast starts now.
Well, I'm excited to get to meet you today.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, just to keep that mic right about where it's at.
All right, cool.
We'll be good to go. So, Edreace, you're here to chat with us because you got your feature film coming out, The Playground. I think you said October 12th?
October 12th, yes.
And you're premiering at Reading
Cinema in Town Square, Claremont. So it's Thursday, October 12th, 7 p.m.
Cool. And then after that, it'll be available on iTunes and...
Yes, so it was kind of set for a release, so midnight of Friday the 13th. The
nice.
next day, it's available on iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, I think Xbox, Sony, and Google Play.
Now,
cool.
For those who don't know, why is Friday the 13th an appropriate day for the release of this film?
Well, there's an enigma around Friday the 13th. I did some kind of reading up on it years ago. There's been some historical things that had to do with Friday the 13th, but I'd say that there definitely is something, without giving away a spoiler, in the film that that actually connects with the urban legend of Friday the 13th, which, at least from the modern sense, believe the gates of hell or something open midnight of Friday the 13th for a period of time, which could have been taken from
Jason, the Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah.
All of those have.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Ominous.
That's true. So it kind of matched the tone of the film. However, I think it's more than just that kind of a tone. There's a pull to it, I think, from that aspect. Most people who have watched it, though, or we've done test screenings, they've walked away with a very different feeling. So,
as you're the writer and director, right?
I'm the writer and director, yes.
So, for the audience who's listening, who potentially might come to your screening, what is the elevator pitch for the film? Like what are they in for?
Well, I'd say that elevator pitch would be it's Pulp Fiction meets The Devil's Advocate.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
And
from the little bit I've seen of it, that actually is a really good description.
Oh, thank you. That's kind of the short elevator pitch. I'd say also that it's kind of a modern fable. So if it does have a fantasy element to it, but at the same time, it's meant to be kind of have some real feelings and context to it as well. It is difficult to kind of explain once you start to expand out on it because you're covering multiple stories.
Right. So you brought like 5 classic tales.
Yes.
And interwove them into kind of one film.
Yes.
But in the bit that I saw, there's a bit of a storytelling aspect to it too, which I found an interesting device that you have. Considering how they're old stories that started in the vocal tradition, right?
Yes.
And they've been carried through generations and generations, and now you're taking your take on it. And I thought it was that a conscious decision to add a little bit of a storytelling style element into it?
There definitely was. The way that it ended up panning out was a little bit more accidental. This film was actually meant to be told in 5 short movies that were just to be put on YouTube and kind of an anthology. It was really more an effort to showcase some talent that San Diego has. Getting good people together, good actors together, and good production, and kind of taking it really seriously, as professional as we could. I think once we started to build the team of people, we realized the scale of this film could go much beyond a YouTube, a YouTube viral share type thing. And so we started to film it, and there's often what you have in your head of how it's going to look. And once we started to see how this film kind of took its time, and it kind of had like a, not a short film feel, we then kind of went back and started to actually add a few things to the film, and then it turned into a feature, a full-on feature. So
yeah, it's got a real deliberate pace to it in the performances. How did you approach the working process with your actors?
Well, the actors, one of the things that I tried to do with this story was I felt that we needed people that actually could kind of dive really deep into a little bit of a dramatic type of feel. And so I was always interested in the theater talent in San Diego. And it turns out we have a lot more theaters in San Diego and kind of a lot more of that buzz than even areas of Los Angeles. And so we ended up bringing in a lot of really talented theater actors, and it was kind of discussing with them, okay, it's a film, it's not a play, and a lot of them would tell me, I'm trained to kind of hit the person in the back row with my hand gestures, and so I think for them they had to actually go back to a little bit of maybe some of their early acting techniques and start to adapt it to film. And so I tried to spend as much time with the actors prior to, just because these are folk tales and they're very short, so they're maybe like a paragraph long. They've, like you said, they've survived thousands of years or hundreds of years, some of them just off of being told as a bedtime story. Mm-hmm. So by the time I got my hands on them, whether it was in a book, in a book stack somewhere, or I found something online, they were very short, and so I had to kind of stretch that out into a character, and they had to fill in blanks of how can this be done in a modern time and be believable. So it was kind of like a constructing process to build the characters, because I had an idea of where the story should go, but I did want the actors to feel comfortable, and some of them brought amazing adaptations that they felt was stronger than necessarily what was written. And that really, I think, I'm glad they made those decisions and kind of pushed me and said, I don't think this person would do this or say this. I think I'd probably do it like that. And so I guess there was like a little more of ownership that I gave to the characters.
Right.
And so, it worked out great. We had an amazing cast. All of them, they put a lot of time into the roles too. I mean, they came on set very, very prepared, and they came even with variations of things. I mean, Matthew Moeller, who plays the young boy in the film, he had completely memorized his part very early, and he had memorized it with an accent that he thought he should add to it. And once we got to moving it forward, without giving anything away, we kind of looked at it and said, maybe we should just drop the accent. And he completely changed it back to without an accent, and just adapted it and did it in a much different fashion, and it was still just as good.
So for you, what is it about these fables that you were drawn to? Why did you decide to make a film about this?
That's a very good question. So this was in 2012, 2013. I was actually writing another screenplay, very different movie, kind of a much more happier and funner movie. And, it was kind of like, if you guys remember, there was a string of mass shootings that had happened in the United States, and I think the last one that just devastated everyone was the Sandy Hook elementary shootings. And, that kind of interrupted the flow of the normal conversations with people, because it was just this kind of empty, sad feeling, everyone kind of scratching their heads saying, like, why would somebody do that? And I think the question of why never really having a conclusion, and, us as a society not necessarily having a pure coordinate. So this is why this happens, A lot of times they'll say, oh, well, this person was troubled from childhood, and then they'd find out that the person lived a very happy suburb life, and, nothing was ever reported. Or, some people are just bad seeds, and they just do that. So after I kind of just heard so many different versions, I went in, and it caused me to do some reading, and that reading took me into UCSD book stacks and SDSU and large libraries that had old texts, and I actually found that I was kind of scratching the surface of something that has been discussed for thousands of years, which is the problem of evil. Mm-hmm. And there's many people who've asked this question before, and it's been recycled in faith and different cultures and traditions. And so as I started to read, I realized Okay. I did notice some common, I mean, I was taking notes on whatever I could find, but I started to notice patterns of kind of where a lot of these faiths and cultures believed it came from. And to my surprise, it was something I didn't know before that. And so when I started to think, okay, you know, how can I turn this into a story? I found that a lot of these stories were actually, a lot of this concept of morality it kind of ended up remaining in folklore more, because it was the kind of tangible thing you could tell your kid, and you could turn it into story format and say it to people, and they can carry it. Oh, that story of, you know, or Aesop's fables, or a lot of these. That's kind of how they became preserved. And then you have the Abrahamic faiths, and they have their own canon on evil and where the source of it was. So eventually I compared some notes, found some very strange patterns of almost the same thing. And then I was like, okay, how am I gonna dive into this? From what corner am I gonna try to tackle this? And what's my goal if I even do this? And so eventually I couldn't really, as a screenwriter, anytime I'd start writing something, I just like, okay, the weight of what I'm about to deal with doesn't match this, you know, character I'm writing. And I just felt that everything I was writing just weighed a lot less than the subject. And so eventually I kind of backed up and said, maybe this is a bad idea. And I'll just go back to writing what I was doing. And, you know, as you guys know yourselves, your inspiration is kind of, you write from there. And if your mind and thoughts are going somewhere, sometimes it's better to follow that and write on that. So I ended up back there, and then I actually stopped and I was like, wait a minute, some of these stories are really nice, and I don't think a lot of people know these stories. And I kind of took the route of, why don't I just let these stories breathe and use my creativity as a screenwriter to kind of start to tie them together and create a web out of them. And, you know, that's my, I guess, creative contribution to it all. But let's just let the stories breathe, even though they're from vastly different parts of the world. There's a Sumerian story which dates back farther than 2,000 years. There's one from Norse mythology, which is the son of Thor. Another one is from kind of the Abrahamic faiths. And so I kind of grabbed ones that I felt covered different sectors of, I guess, the challenges we face. And some of them are seemingly different than the others. And eventually I just said, okay, I'm going to start to write these stories out and build a modern context to them. So if you have a Sumerian farmer whose, you know, crops died and he was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I don't have any food. I kind of morphed that into, you know, a homeless man in South Central who got his cart stolen and kind of started from there. But I think the stories, their impulses of their human challenges are timeless, so they convert over. And I also thought, you know, the fact that these stories have survived thousands of years is kind of a testament of the strength of the story. So, well,
I mean, it's what Disney did, right? Like, he recognized the strength of those old tales and built an entire empire around it.
Yeah,
so, we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. Look at what worked, right?
Yeah,
and use that as the springboard for inspiration and move yourself forward.
Very true.
I think it's brilliant. It's a brilliant tactic to take.
Well, thank you.
To find your voice by starting from something that's so familiar for everybody, right? I mean,
thank you.
But in Disney's case, he took those dark stories and made them happier. You took those dark stories and made them darker. What was the atmosphere like on set? Like working with such heavy subject matter and a pretty dark, creepy genre.
In a town that's generally pretty lighthearted.
Yeah. It surprisingly, it was very lighthearted on set. We had a really amazing crew, and the cast was amazing. But at the end of every cut, there was even though people were working hard, there was a joke, there was something to keep it light, and also the fact that it was tough to track, even if you were a crew member, and each day or each weekend we're following another story and we're following a fragment of that story. One of the things that I tried to do to, I thought it could be a technique to help the movie was the characters, each of the actors only got their portion of the script.
Oh. So
no one really knew where it was going except for a few people. And if you wanted to go through it, I think it was like 170-page screenplay, by all means, go ahead and knock yourself out. So there was about a few people who knew the bigger picture, and obviously we had to. They were the producers and the people who were the costume, the production designer, and the director of photography. But the actors, I kind of wanted them to not really know what part they play in this thing. And there's just focus, and that's how we kind of all live our lives. We don't really know how the bigger scheme is of, when I go and talk to my neighbor, what did I do from that conversation? How did that affect that person's life when they walked away from me? And so I've found that if they eventually know in the back of their mind the end result of where everything is going, they may actually, I don't know, maybe give away some of what's about to happen. And so, I think also I got this strategy from, I was reading somewhere that in ninjas, the master ninja, he will send out ninjas to go and get intelligence, but he won't tell them that they're on the same mission. And they'll go thinking they're the only one there. They'll grab this, and then the other one will go and grab other information. They have different assignments, but they bring it all back to probably a lot like CIA and intelligence of now. But
it's a good strategy for confirming the information that comes back.
Yes,
yeah,
and preventing collaboration between them on conclusions that they could, but. That was an experiment, and I think it shows in the film when you see it. They really, these characters are playing the film as if they're the lead, and they have their journey. And once everything's cut, a lot of them actually, when they finally saw the final product, they were surprised as to how their story played into another story, and so that was a very happy feeling that I was able to surprise even the people working on the project instead of like, yeah, we all know the story, let's just see it on screen. It was, whoa, I had no idea. So
that's awesome. How long did you guys take to shoot all of that?
It was shot in 30 days total. We shot it on the weekends. And so it was, I believe, February of 2014 until July of 2014. There's a lot of work during the week preparing for it, and so that I tried to, in a way, make this as a good trainer for like a studio film or an art house film, because I know 30 days is a general standard.
Yeah.
For you got to get it shot in 30 days. Sometimes even less, but 21
is pretty common.
21 is common. A lot of money is being spent every day when you're doing this in LA, and so you have. I tried to pretend that there's executive producers breathing down our necks, even though it's not there. It's all independent film.
It's good practice, though, right?
Yeah.
'Cause when you get into that situation where you do have those people breathing down your neck, you want to be able to deliver
Exactly.
at the rate that they need you to deliver at, right? You don't want to suddenly find yourself going, what do you mean I don't have 60 days to do this? Panic sets in and everything's chaos and pandemonium after, right? Like,
very true.
If you can treat your personal project like a professional set, you're prepping yourself for the day that you're in that position.
Definitely. That's exactly what we tried.
I think it's great.
Well, so with that in mind, I mean, you look at the film and this looks very quality. I mean, it looks like something coming out of LA, and you said you held yourself to that professional standard. How did you raise the funds for this? Because there aren't a whole lot of feature films being made here in San Diego, and this one's a big endeavor here. What was your business plan? How'd you get this all started?
So there was private investors. These are people that, I mean, I knew of, and some of them I knew, and they weren't necessarily film investors. So I had to pitch, this is very risky. Film is not like real estate. But I had to kind of educate them on film investment. And then, I was just very honest with them. They did ask me, I guess, what's the goal with it all? And eventually I kind of went back to the reason I started to go down that route in the first place, which is hopefully there's some benefit to seeing it, and it's not necessarily just a roller coaster ride and you're kind of back at the same spot you're left. And I think it resonated. I mean, I definitely received a lot of, sorry, not for me. And then I started getting like, okay, count me in. And then we went from there. So I think in San Diego you can find investment. There are people that love the arts. However, I think some of I'm not sure how many people are used to investing in films in San Diego. Mm-hmm. Whereas Los Angeles, the culture is a little bit different. There's definitely more of a, I guess people are more in the know of how films work, and so it was. We had a very small budget, but we spread it out. And actually, what came to the aid of the movie was the San Diego community. So I graduated San Diego State, and I'm a San Diego State Film School graduate. So I went back to state and said, "Hey, I knew she used to be the dean then, but she was still there." I don't know if I should say her name or not. Yeah, sure. So CJ Keith, amazing person. I said, I'm still doing film, 10 years later. And that excited them, because I think a lot of their graduates, there's just a drop off of how many people stay committed to such a difficult journey. Mm-hmm. And so
most of the people I went to school with aren't doing this anymore.
Exactly. Me too. And so she's like, wow, you're still in San Diego. You're still making films. And I said, yeah, we need some help with costumes because some of these costumes are very, very specific, and there's only so much we can find in thrift stores. And we had thrift stores actually agree. Barris Foundation, very, very generous. They said, yeah, you guys can use whatever you want. Just bring it back and dry clean it and clean it up and stuff. So they were very kind, and so that gave us more props and furniture. So we had to kind of get creative with even how to get things for little to no cost. And so they San Diego State gave us access to some of their theater department wardrobe. And so I looked at it like, are the resources in San Diego? Okay, yes, they are. So check. Okay, that's one good thing. Next, can we get those resources, and can we get them for, little cost? And from there, we just got creative with it. So
that's awesome. I feel like a bunch of people in our community are taking notes right now. I am. That's why I asked the question.
I hope they don't bombard a Barris Foundation.
Did you grow up in the area?
I did. I went to Scripps Ranch High School, Wagenheim Middle School, and then went to San Diego State and graduated in 2006. So.
Very cool. What was the deciding factor for you staying in San Diego for college and going to SDSU? Did you look at other schools, or was that just where you? This is where I am, and just end up there.
Well, you get kind of spoiled when you live in San Diego, just because every day you walk outside, and we're in a tourist city. There's so much to do, and the weather's great. I actually had a unique opportunity right after graduation to direct at that time a short film. But it already had a distribution on a satellite channel, and I thought, oh my God, I'm so lucky. I just graduated, and there's kind of a project waiting for a creative director, and so, by long story short, that short film ended up turning into a feature, and that was a very, very grounding, sobering experience, especially coming out of film school where you're only making short films and for assignments, and jumping into a full feature, being half the age of everyone there, really having to kind of just not screw up, not upset people, and you're making mistakes left and right, and people notice it. And but that film ended up doing okay in the festival circuit. It took me a little bit around the world. I got to go to Cairo. It got into the festival in Egypt, and I met quite a few people. And so when I came back, I realized, with the age of this kind of new digital age that's happening, and filmmaking starting to be done in, any different nooks and crannies of the United States, that San Diego could be a place, especially with the talent that I've met here, to create serious projects and take it very seriously. One of the things that a lot of my filmmaking buddies I would constantly see was, they dropped the ball on a production just because they could. Like I said, they would film something and then they're like, oh, we got to go film this scene, but I got to go to this party. Don't worry, we can film it. We have all the equipment in my garage. So it was a little bit of like, I don't know, more of a casual filmmaking.
Like a hobby instead of a
hobby.
Profession.
Exactly. And then I noticed also my friends were more willing to they were more interested in kind of celebrating the film as opposed to really digging their heels in and saying, I really want to make my craft good.
Yeah. There's quite a bit of that kind of pat ourselves on the back and be proud that we finished something. And I don't think there's enough criticism going on of what we're doing right now.
Not criticism, but critical discussion and thought, I think.
That's what I meant. But yeah.
Criticism has a negative connotation to it, but yeah.
But yeah, I know, like critique or critics. Technically, yeah, you're right. The word is criticism.
I asked Carenza Laguerre yesterday when we were hanging out, because I haven't had a chance to talk to her since she worked on 2 sets of mine like a year and a half ago. I was like, just by the way, what were your thoughts on the film, and what were your thoughts about what it was like to work with my team and be on our set? And she paused for a second and goes, how honest can I be? And I said, well, I asked because I want to hear it. Like, I need to hear it. I need to hear from other people who aren't the 10 people I work with on everything, the people who kind of come in and out and have, other teams that they work with and stuff. I'd like your honest opinion about what it's like to work with me and what it's like to work with my team. And, where did you see things that maybe you think we could improve, or how did our process work or not work with your way of acting and performing? Like, I genuinely want to know that, because there's no way I can become a better filmmaker if I'm not getting that information from anybody.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
So at some point, yes, congratulations, you finished a movie, but then at some point, like, maybe not on the podcast, but I'd like to have an honest discussion with a filmmaker about, kind of where things work or don't work in my view, and where on my films they see the shortcomings or the successes for what we've done. Until we can start all being honest in that way with one another, I think there's just kind of a certain level we'll get to, and we'll never get past it.
Well, yeah, because that's how you raise the bars. You have these discussions, and you find the weak points, and keep building from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're kind of traveling backwards in time here, but what made you want to even be a filmmaker in the first place? Why did you choose this profession? Because as you said earlier, it is not an easy profession, and you have stayed with it to,
He's crazy, Whitney. We're all crazy.
Yeah, it's like that Seal song, "We're never going to survive unless we're a little crazy."
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. That's where we're going with this. All right.
So yeah, that is a very good question.
Well, it's the one profession where everybody's like, "Oh, that's nice. When are you going to get a real job?"
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
it's a real job.
Totally. It's very kind of tough to summarize, I guess, how I ended up falling into film. I fell more into film than saying I'm going to be a filmmaker. For me, some people have that vision from a very early age. When I was young, I used to draw a lot, and here the funny part was, I drew a lot, and my pictures were okay, and people liked my pictures. They're like, "Can you draw me this?" The problem was I didn't like the process of it, because I was kind of like, it just never satisfied my whatever OCD or perfectionism to it. And so eventually they'd have to just pull it from me and say, "I like it like this, stop going at it." I'm like, it's not done. But that process continuous of, oh my God, I'm going to draw and so what happened was I went away from the arts I just didn't think it was a serious thing. And I went to San Diego State to be an engineer until after I get into school and I start to learn what engineers do all day. I didn't want to do that. I was like, "This is what engineers do all day?" No, but that's not what I thought. I thought I was going to be like designing bridges and like drafting it like these, I guess the way they show them in commercials, or there's like people like creating architectural designs and it's all fun. I didn't know there's so much math and sitting over, draft tables and
every engineer I know is like, I designed parking lots and storage centers.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing profession. I felt that I didn't have the bandwidth to do that continuously. And so it wasn't until I took a theater class, and it was a GE class. And I found myself just anytime I had that class, I just kind of found I was like happy to go to that class, like happier than the other classes. And to the point where sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to be late." And the professor was pretty lenient, but I'm like, "Wait, the professor's lenient and I want to get there early?" Like, what? And I started to diagnose that and say, like, I think I really like this.
Yeah, there's something to this, right?
And in college, it's more common for people to go into something completely different than what they thought they were going to graduate from. But I found myself in the front row, goody two shoes, trying to answer all the questions, bothering the professor after the class. And I got into the program and I started to just fill my schedule with as many classes. At the time, I had friends who actually were waiting for kind of months and a couple of years to even declare the major, and they were getting rejected. So I took that as also a sign that maybe this is where I'm meant to go into this. And I do believe in fate, and I found myself so just absorbed into those classes to the point where I wasn't really actively thinking I'm going to be a filmmaker. I just really loved learning about what film is and the history of film and how important it is in our day-to-day. Even though we section it off as entertainment, it informs us on how to live life, on how to talk and what we wear, and it's much more involved in that. And I guess here I am.
Who would you consider some of your influences in film?
One of my professors, Professor Stuart Boytilla, he still teaches at San Diego State, actually on Tuesday of this week, I got to present to his intro to film class. And, he allowed me to come and just talk a little bit about what filmmaking entails and give him a realistic understanding of it. But Stuart Wojtyla, he wrote a book called Myth in the Movies. And that book kind of transformed my understanding of how films, they all have a DNA. And if you understand the matrix of it, then you can begin to go down and learn the craft in a careful way. So I was always interested in improving my craft. And, that's an endless journey. I would say I'm an amateur still. I have a lot to learn. But with each film, you learn a little bit more about, where to lean more to and what to lean maybe away from. So.
Thank God for happy accidents.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a special opening. That was very strange how that happened. But I ended up getting my degree. I finished my business degree in marketing, and then I also had my film degree. So the business degree helped me sustain a living while I was doing the film on the side. So
that's cool. Does having a business marketing background, do you find that helps in like raising funds for the film and kind of the business side of your movies? Has that been a benefit?
Yes, I would say it has, because the business mind and the creative mind are like oil and water.
Right.
Creativity has no reason. There's no statistics to it. It's just, it flows out of a different part of you. And business just starts to turn the gears of your mind in a very different way. And so I definitely feel, maybe just subconsciously, that perhaps just the language of business did help me in financing the film, or at least talking to the investors in a way that, gets them the golden words they want to hear. Because they want to know where you're going. Do you have a plan? And
what's the ROI?
What's the ROI? And if you can answer those really quickly, they're like, okay, the person's not wasting my time. Let's just see how this plays out. And but I have found even film investment is a kind of a crazy thing if you think about it. Very little films, especially independent films, actually make profit.
Right.
Yet there's so much money going into it. And so I realized, the reason for a lot of investment that I've found is if you can hit them in their heart and they want that story to be out. Mm-hmm. And then there's that aspect that, okay, I may make some money on this, but I just really like this story. That's the best way to be involved. I want to be involved, and I want to feel like I'm part of the making of this story. That's a better place to start. If you start with, okay, well, let me show you these movies that made money, and you can take that route.
But it's also setting up an expectation with your investors that you're then on the hook for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And that's a dangerous place to go too, right? Like you don't want your film investor coming on board expecting your $100,000 film to turn a $20 million box office.
Exactly.
Happen for one guy.
Yeah, exactly. It did.
We're going to replicate the almost unreplicatable.
That's true.
We're going to cushion their expectations and say, you're not an investor, you're a patron of the arts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually, that's very accurate to what, even if you're using euphemisms of investment, you're selling them more on that. And I think the interesting thing I've found about independent filmmaking and independent filmmakers is there's when someone's that willing to take a chance and put their livelihood on, it's a different kind of individual, or at least a different kind of risk taking than somebody that's, from far off trying to kind of make sure that everything in their life is taken care of, and their career and trust funds. And I've found that by default, you're a big risk to go into film. You have to kind of endure risk and have the courage to just say, look, I could lose my house, but I really want to do this.
Yeah.
And so I applaud artists in general and filmmakers and actors incredibly, because oftentimes actors they're the subject of someone else's ideas, if not on all occasions. And so as a filmmaker or as a director or a writer, you kind of, you have something to say, and there's more creative, I guess, input from that angle. In acting, of course, performances have something to say within their own roles, but I've found that especially when I speak to a lot of these amazing actors that were even in the playground, they're coming back from call times, or auditions, and these are people with incredible dignity and talent, and they'll sit in a panel, do something, and they're kind of like, nah, that kind of American Idol type of approach to them. And they have to develop incredibly thick skin, and sometimes to the point where they actually may believe that there's a huge divide between their class of acting and, these people that are making incredible amounts of money on it. And for me, the two are the same. A-list actors, they're paid a lot of money. But I don't see them in any different light than an actor that has, I believe, the power to do that with the right coaching or with the right. So
perhaps they were just fortunate.
Yeah, fortunate. I mean, there's some celebrities I know, I won't mention their names, but they've spoken very privately with me about how they made it. And the interesting thing is, it's all like they could never have planned it. Someone saw something in them and told someone else, and they got a role which they didn't even do good in, but somehow it's just this kind of chain reaction thing that any actor, that can happen to them. And
Shane Allen, who's in The Playground, he's been in a couple of my films. Wonderful guy to work with.
Amazing.
But he's always saying you're just one introduction away from your big break.
Yes, it's so true.
You're just one introduction away. You don't know who it's going to be, but you got to be out there, and you got to be doing the work, and you got to be, meeting the people. And he's like, some project you're on, it might not seem like the biggest one or the most important one, but you don't know who you're going to meet on that project and what their next project's going to be. And
so true.
It all matters. Just showing up. And I always say on the podcast, showing up is like the most important part.
Oh yeah. And Shane is an amazing person to work with. He's very optimistic. And he has also that kind of,
he's an incredibly intelligent actor. He's very thoughtful about, every line and every moment in the scene, and being present.
Totally. He's very present, and he has a rich, kind of, he's somebody that won't go through even meeting a person or an experience without grabbing a piece of wisdom that he can kind of add to his tool belt.
Yeah.
And he has also that kind of, if sky's the limit, I don't look at myself as an independent actor. I mean, he worked on Sully with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
And he doesn't come back with a feeling like he has a feather on his cap, or, he's just kind of like,
he just shares with you everything about it that he learned, He's such a giving guy. And I think that's an incredibly cool thing and wonderful thing, to find those people who are willing to share their experience with you and help you grow through their growth, not just kind of hold it tight. So a lot of people like to hold stuff tight, especially in this business. It's weird. Hold things to the vest, and they don't want to share. And if you know the secret thing that I know, then, you're going to book the gig and I'm not. And you get a lot of that kind of weird thing going on. But I just applaud the people who are like, I had this great experience. I learned this. Let me share it.
Let me share it with you.
Well, those are the people in this industry that they're in it for the work, not the glory. That finished product, that's for the audience. That's great. They're there for that moment.
Yeah.
Which is a very meditative thought to leave us on, because we have come to the end of this show.
Yeah, real quick. So October 12th, Are tickets available now, or
tickets available? They're available on. You get them on the film's official site, theplaygroundfilm.com. If you want to follow us on social media, it's Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Playground Movie, and all of the links should be there. I believe there's one theater that's almost filled, and it's the biggest one. So if you want to see it on the biggest screen, definitely get your tickets as soon as possible. They opened up a second screen, but it's a threshold-based screening. So if the pre-sales are,
if you get enough pre-sales, that screening will happen.
They'll happen. So hopefully, we will get the second screening, so nobody will have to want it in the last second, which it seems to be. At least from what I'm finding, at San Diego.
San Diego is very much a last minute deal. Like I help produce the film awards, and every year it's still the same. It's like, oh God, is anybody going to come?
Yeah. In the last hour, it all happens.
It's like, we made the tickets really cheap earlier on. Why are they waiting to the end? It's like,
yeah, it's got that.
Then everybody's calling up. I can't afford the ticket. Well, why didn't you buy it 4 weeks ago? I couldn't afford it then either. Like, I don't know what to tell you then. It was half cost 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I take it as we're spoiled. We have so much going on in our city.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, if some of these films and events, Film Awards was happening in like a Midwest town, 3 months in advance, people would be pre-purchasing to be
sold out.
Oh my gosh, gotta tell you, there's a film festival that goes on in my hometown, and you better believe that, people buy those tickets forever in advance because it's like the one exciting thing that happens.
Yeah. Here it's like, wait, when's yours? Because there's another premiere 2 days before that, and then I'm going to another thing a week after that. So which one is yours? I'm like, oh, it's the one in the middle.
Our point being, be proactive. Buy your tickets in advance so we know you're going to show up.
Yeah, exactly.
And it helps the filmmakers. It helps the people throwing the consortium.
And I would say this. Those of you who are listening to the show, I mean, you're obviously film fans. You're part of our community. The majority of our audience is the part of our community. Please encourage the people who aren't part of our community but are your friends to come see the films that our fellow filmmakers are making. We have to grow our audiences beyond the 1,000 of us that are making movies in town. Mm-hmm. There's 3 million people in San Diego County. We need to tap into them, and it's only going to happen if we start reaching out beyond our film friends.
Yes.
And definitely start reaching our general audiences that all of us have. All of us have people that we can bring. You can bring 1 or 2 people with you to a screening who aren't part of making any of the other movies, like they're just your friends from work, or you met them at church or whatever. Bring them out to the films, let them see the art that we're doing. That's how we're going to grow what we've got going on here, and that's what will make investors more interested in the films.
It definitely will. It starts with if a culture is developed, there's demand, and when there's demand, investors are looking for what is in demand and how can I get an edge on that. Yeah. And so
let's all start by going out to see The Playground.
October 12th.
Yes, October 12th, Reading Cinema. Get your tickets on the website.
Cool.
All right. Thanks,
Edreace,
guys.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Hello there, citizens. I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the floaty that will not flush no matter how many times you try in the toilet bowl of crime. I am Darkwing Duck, telling you please, talk hard and enjoy the mindgasm. Whatever the heck that means. After all, you are watching Intellectual Podcast with your ears.
You know the old saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression? That phrase is incredibly true in our business. In entertainment, your first impression can mean everything. It can mean the difference of booking a job or not booking a job, having an audition or not having an audition. That first impression can get you in the door and make things happen. And for an actor, that first impression is the headshot. First and foremost, casting directors, producers, they're going to see your headshot and they're going to make decisions about whether or not you get seen based on that one image. So it's incredibly important to make that image an investment in your future. And to do that, you want to find the right photographer, someone who's going to work with you to craft the perfect image. the perfect first impression. And I suggest you check out portraitsbypeggy.com. Peggy's been doing photography since the 80s, and she really knows her stuff. And she wants to work with you to craft the perfect captured image, the one that captures the uniqueness of you and helps you book the job. She wants to work with you. She wants to really get into who you are, what sort of jobs you're trying to book, and help you get the perfect image. So check out portraitsbypeggy.com and book your portfolio session today.